parents of Kaylee Gonzalez, who was killed in the attack, now urging other businesses to turn over whatever footage they have before it's too late.
There's a 24-hour mark on a lot of those little video cams. There's a 7-day, a 1 week, a 1 month.
We're hitting the month. If the key part of the evidence is outside that residence, then we're losing it. We have to get it now.
Fearing that evidence is disappearing, Chrissy Gonzalez shares what she thinks happened in the early morning hours of November 13th.
I think this person went in very methodical. I think he really thought it out. I think he was quick. I think it was quiet, and he got in and he got out.
Okay, so good to see you guys. We are going to be going through some of the latest news 30 days into this case, and then we're going to deal with the stuff that's sort of less relevant. So yesterday, you may remember that we sort of dealt with an overview of 12 issues dealing with the entire case. In this in this overview, we're sort of going to look at targeted sort of things like the ladder. We're going to look at surveillance cameras, but specific surveillance cameras. We're going to look at when the information about the Hyundai likely came out. We're also going to look at some of the potential misinformation from social media and also from mainstream media, and then just ask the question: how do you navigate between? How do you sort of figure your way between the misinformation? Do you just consume everything, or do you choose certain channels, or do you look at the information with a critical eye, or does it depend on who it's coming from, or doesn't really matter? You're just trying to gather information, what's sort of going on. So it's kind of a okay, Timmy, come. It's kind of a smorgasbord of of content today. Let's put you down. There we go. As soon as I set up for a live and I'm like ready to go, the dog's like, great, now I'm going to have my Madonna and child moment. And so anyway, I've got to let him do it. Otherwise, I can't concentrate either. It's difficult to concentrate anyway, but there you go. So let's have a look at a few comments and then we'll continue with our analysis. Amy Hall, SM Kowalinsky, Terry Dean, yeah, he does look a bit extra snuggly. Latitude says, I love schnauzers. Okay. So I'm going to come back to you guys. I'll sort of interact with you guys in a moment, but I first want to sort of go through the stuff that I want to go through, right? So what you heard there, and this came from, well, this comes from this news source, ABC News. Can you guys see that? New surveillance image in college murder mystery as police and parents speak out. It's not really surveillance image, it's surveillance video, but it's of that, I suppose we've gotten the image, but law enforcement have gotten the video, right? But the sort of issue that comes up in that footage is that this kind of data can expire. Some surveillance gets overwritten after 24 hours, some after a week, some after a month, some a little bit longer than that. So we were actually quite lucky to retrieve this footage, right? Now, I would say about a week ago, I saw reports saying that the Idaho Police Department were overwhelmed. And I thought, guys, you've got an army of people on hand. You can't be overwhelmed, right? Until now, until we see that they've got 22,000 tips just dealing with the Hyundai Elantra, 22,000. Now, I don't know how much of those tips are videos, but that's a heck of a lot of information to go through. Even 100 would be a lot, right? Even 1,000 would be a huge amount to go through one by one. This is 22,000. So, when I said that I think this case is going to be solved, it's going to an arrest is going to kind of be announced within the next couple of days up to a week. Well, you probably do want to go through those 22,000 tips first, and then deal with whatever's on the other side, right? So does that make sense? Because so what we're certainly seeing in this case is not a lack of information, not a lack of clues and tips to work with. The other thing that has come up today that's really, really interesting is that the information regarding the white Hyundai came out actually came out basically on day one. On the first day after the crime, they actually knew that they were looking for this vehicle. That was a question I asked, was since when have they been looking for the Hyundai? Remember I said to you guys, well, they were looking for tire tracks, right? They were looking for tire tracks within about 6 days. So why were they doing that? Well, it's because there was a Hyundai, well, there was a white vehicle already on their radar then. And we've now found out exactly which camera found that footage right on day one. I just want to deal with this comment from Susie Cabin. She says, I'm sorry, I don't think it'll be solved soon. Susie, I actually think it's been, I don't want to say solved, but a lot is already known. Do you guys remember that they said we don't just want an arrest, we want like a successful prosecution? Remember them saying that? That suggests that they actually know who they're looking for and they already have kind of what they have. What they're working on now is proving their case, right? Don't you get that sense? So I actually get a sense that it's sort of solved already. And what they're doing now is just dealing with this huge, huge amount of evidence. That's my take on it. Okay, so let's go through what I've got here. So I want to next play something from the. Let's do that. I just want to play something from law enforcement where they talk
leaving
about
her daughter and 3 others stabbed to death.
2,000 tips. Let's go to that. I wonder if you guys have seen this. This came out today.
No.
Today,
So
32.
far, we have a list of approximately 22,000 registered white Hyundai Elantras that fit into our criteria that we're sorting through. That's an awful lot of information, but it may not be all of them. So the public can help us with that.
So there you have it, 22,000 tips on that vehicle. And do you remember me saying that I wonder how long they've held onto this information before asking the public for help? Well, now we know, since the very beginning. Basically, they've known about this for, I think, 3 weeks. I think it's been 3 weeks, and they told us about the Hyundai, and then the Food Mart clerk came out with their information. And now they're apparently overwhelmed with tips just regarding that vehicle, right? So I think we'll come back to this update. But here is some more information from the official sort of source. Today's press release, December 15, 2022. And shall I read it, go through it with you? The Moscow Police Department is providing the following information. They're sorting through, there you can see it, 22,000 registered 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantras that fit into the search criteria. Now, what does that actually mean? That fit into the search criteria? Does it mean that they're looking at 22,000 white Elantras? Are they looking at, I mean, if you think about it, it's a city with, I think, a population of 20,000 people. So do 1 out of 10 drive Hyundai Elantras? It's, yeah, I don't know. It's quite hard to make out what they mean by that. Fits into the search criteria. What exactly is that? When they say they're sorting through those Elantras, are they talking about in Moscow, in Idaho, in what sort of database are they referring to? registered. So could there be Hyundai Elantras that are not registered, that were bought secondhand, or that are sort of maybe even stolen, like, right? So, they go on to say, tips and leads led the investigators to ask the public for additional help. So it seems to be that they had this white vehicle on their radar right in the beginning, so that it was part of what they had, but they weren't quite sure what to do with that. So it wasn't so it's like this ladder that's behind me. It's like this idea of, okay, so there's something there, it could be important, but we don't know. And then they say tips and leads led investigators to ask for help in terms of this white vehicle. The other thing that's quite interesting, I don't know if it's reading too much into it, but they say 22,000 registered Hyundai Elantras. That's not white Hyundai Elantras, or I'm not sure if it is. Anyway, then they say in the immediate area of the King Road residence during the early hours of November 13th. So we've dealt with that part before. Then they say they're sifting through significant amounts of video content. Specifically, video content. So one wonders how much of this 22,000 is video content. And then they refer to this video, and then they say, from the beginning, Moscow detectives have asked for any and all video from residents and businesses within that area. And remember, yesterday we went through that sort of square, the square of, can I maybe find that square again to show you guys? Just basically within this square, right? And of the city of Idaho, which is sort of, let's go back one, just sort of this square area that they were sort of looking at. And I think the video that I just played, the officer explains why they are sort of changing the parameters of that square. So I'm going to go back to that in a second. So in other words, the question is, so you guys are looking for information in the square. Why was that? Were you looking for a student? And do you only want information from that square? Because the sighting of the Food Mart sighting was over there, right outside of that square. And I think they've been looking at video from a bar that is, or not a bar, it's a liquor store. Brian Ensign was showing a liquor store that is well north of this area, where they've also been sourcing liquors video. So, I mean, obviously they are looking beyond the square now, right? Can you see that? The thing that is really, really interesting is where they found the original footage. You guys aren't going to believe this. It's really quite shocking and also quite surprising, where they actually found the camera that found the first evidence of this white sedan. So we'll get to that in a moment. So there you can see that square better. There's the Arboretum and Botanical Garden. They were basically saying they want to look at the fabric directly around this house. And I guess they want to go into this area as well, because it's one way that they could drive out of there is this way. So if you'd committed the crime by driving in this way, right? If you'd committed the crime driving in that way, you could theoretically drive out a different way, sort of around that way. Yeah, actually, I don't know if you can connect. I suppose you could go that way and come out like this, quite a squiggly route. If you didn't want to drive out the same way that you drove in, you could drive out sort of along this route and then come out that way. So maybe that's why they're looking at this side of it. Okay. Right, so let's go back to that video and just listen to what he says about the parameters of the search for the vehicle.
When investigators first started asking for video, what sources were you asking to get video from?
Well, we started looking for video the day of the crime. Officers on scene, before I even arrived, had identified certain residences in the area that had video cameras. We know just from past experience that security cameras, doorbell cameras, and the like are very, very commonplace now. And that's a part of our standard procedures to start looking for a possible video source.
So I must say, when I heard that, to my shame, I responded with I sort of felt, I don't believe that. Like, I felt like, I think you've only known about this vehicle much later, and you've only asked about sort of video footage. You've sort of woken up on that aspect way too late, right? That video footage from right around town should have been asked for or seized immediately. So you would actually imagine, even though he says it's protocol, you would imagine when this sort of thing happens, well, they don't know that they're not going to be able to solve this case or what's going to happen over a week or 2 or 3, but you really want to make it protocol that you immediately alert all businesses in the area, guys, can we get your CCTV? And if you think about it, doesn't it feel like it's taken about a month to say that? It's taken about a month to say we want everyone's, in an indirect way, they've said, any information you might have, but they really needed to stress businesses, CCTV, we need all of that, because it's in the community's interest to help solve a crime where the killer is on the loose in their town. And it feels like that is happening. So I must say, I was quite cynical when I heard this, where he said it's actually protocol. And then it actually turns out they did get some footage, and they probably thought that that was sufficient. And I'm going to show you how we know that they did follow that protocol right in the beginning. Maybe not as thoroughly as they needed to, but they nevertheless did. We'll get to that in a second.
In and around crime scenes. So we started the day of the crime. And then that expanded as we got more investigators to the area for assistance, and we started putting together teams. And one of our team's sole job was to go through the King Road area, associated neighborhoods, and eventually the main thoroughfares in the city of Moscow, trying to identify videos.
So did you pick that up? He says that it was the job of someone, it was his main job, to go through the homes, I guess, the residences, the buildings, the, I guess, infrastructure, the urban fabric, in like a concentric circle around King Road. In other words, starting very close to King Road and then sort of moving beyond that, right? Let's quickly touch on that.
Associated neighborhoods, and eventually was to go through the King Road team's sole job. We started putting together teams, and one of our team's sole job was to go through the King Road area, associated neighborhoods, and eventually the main thoroughfares in the city of Moscow, trying to identify videos, video cameras, etc., and then contact those business owners, contact those residents, and ask for copies of that video.
Okay, so this is what the result of that was. And this has come out, okay, so this has come out really recently, right? Why is this showing up like this? To me, I'm gonna have to. So can you guys see that, see that headline? White car spotted in footage obtained by police one day after the killing. So basically November 14, right? That is really amazing, right? Isn't it? It's quite shocking. One day after the killings, they'd actually spotted this white car. So they'd known about this all along. They'd known that there was a white car. In other words, this Hyundai Elantra, right? And they kept that to themselves, and then they looked at the tire tracks about 6 days later, so about a week later. Then 2 weeks after that, they only asked sort of us for our assistance. That is, I think, perhaps a mistake. I don't think they necessarily needed to ask for information about a vehicle, but they could have asked for people with CCTV. Instead of this team to go around, they could have made it really specific that we need businesses and so on to do this, instead of saying this now, right? And this is the part that's really interesting, is we actually have a look at the camera that may have solved this case ultimately. And it's possibly this camera, right? And this camera is based on, it comes from is it Lana Apartments? Sorry, apartments on Linda Lane, right? And Linda Lane is 0.3 miles from, there it is, exterior view of house on Linda Lane, right? And that's the view from that apartment. We're going to look at that in a second. But that is the distance to Linda Lane from King Road. You can see it's very, very close in terms of that distance. In terms of the road distance, a little bit further. But one wonders whether you could see towards the house from Linda Lane. I would imagine not. It's difficult to say. But certainly that vehicle that we saw driving basically in this direction, it must have come down Taylor Avenue. There's really no other access point coming from the east other than to go down Taylor Avenue, which means this camera looking out that way down Linda Lane should have seen that vehicle pass that way. And then the question is, did it pass again that way? So we don't know that, but it'll certainly be interesting. So this is the view from that camera. Actually, I'm not sure if it's from the camera or if it's from the apartment. I would actually imagine this is the view sort of from the apartment. If you look at that camera, one would have to really know that area quite well to answer that question. So let's have a look. It's there is the video, and you can see it's under this sort of balcony, or probably the eave of a roof. So if we look at the eave of this roof, and it's on one of these gray pillars, right? So could it be could that be the camera? Is the camera sort of over there? It's attached to one of these gray sort of wooden pillars, and that's the only one that seems to have some sort of apparatus alongside it, right? That one over there. Not sure if there's something there, but is that the camera? And then the question is this camera oriented? Is this camera that's in this street, is it oriented in that direction or not? Is it oriented in this direction? It seems that way. And if you look at this road, I was going to say, if the house on Linda Lane was at the back end of the road, so if there was no more road, then you could assume that it was sort of over there looking that way. But it seems like it's actually looking that way, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem like it's looking that way? if it is looking that way and the driver came down this road, maybe they could see it. So although they may have seen a vehicle driving this way, maybe that footage isn't that clear after all. I don't think it's as clear as that sort of thing. On the other hand, is the camera oriented? Is it looking straight in front of itself? It looks like it is. Also, is the camera rotating? I don't know if it does. Is it a Reslink camera? But isn't that quite an incredible bit of information that the car was spotted on the first day, right? One day after the killing. So November 14th, that was the Monday. And who spotted it, or who retrieved this footage? The landlord, Kane, not sure how to say that, Francetic, strange name. So the landlord was responsible for this. Detectives reached out to this landlord and they asked for the surveillance footage. Says here, perched on top of his 6-unit rental building in Linda Lane. It's 0.3 miles from the murder scene. He said, I downloaded it and gave them access to everything from 2 a.m. through noon on that Sunday the 13th. So I'll put a link to that in chat if you guys are interested. Jeffrey says, I can show you the exact video and timestamp when Jack's black truck drives by Taylor. We're looking for a white Hyundai. Okay. Someone says there's a white merge hatchback in the still photo. Let's have a look. There are a couple of white vehicles. I don't think that is a Hyundai. Or is it? If you look at that back part of it, is that a Hyundai? But that certainly is a white vehicle. Okay. So let's go back to what this officer was saying.
And initially, there was a particular area outlined as where the priority was for asking for video. Why was that area selected?
Well, that area was selected because essentially it surrounds the King Road area, and we know that people typically have to travel to and from. We weren't trying to pigeonhole our investigation into the suspect lives in the area. We wanted.
So I've found that really, really interesting that he says we actually weren't sort of trying to accuse a student of this crime. Is kind of saying, we're not trying to pigeonhole, we're not trying to restrict our focus to someone living in the area, but it kind of feels like they were, because only now are they looking for footage beyond that square, right? Does that make sense? I think that is a factor. I think there was a sense that they're looking for a student, and the question is, should they be, and are they? Because I don't know about you, I thought the suspect is likely to be a student, and this vehicle coming from the east side of Idaho, of Moscow, suggests that it's possibly not a student. So was that like the number one error we all made? Was that something that actually pushed the investigation in the wrong direction?
To make sure that we covered all the bases. And so as we began to gather more information, we began to expand our search area. You may recall from the second press conference, we began to expand our, sure that we covered all the bases. And so as we began to gather more information, we began to expand our search area.
So did you pick that up? As we began to gather more information, we expanded our search area. It should actually be the other way around. You should actually start with quite a wide search. It's actually both. You want to search far and wide and then see where the evidence takes you. But by restricting your, I mean, you can't really criticize them. You do want to obviously search close to the home for footage, but why restrict yourself in that way? If you've got a team that's looking for this sort of thing, then just get all of the footage that you can. So maybe a lesson to learn in the next sort of case is, as soon as something like this happens, right, then you try and, especially if it's a small town, obviously if it's New York City, you couldn't do it, but you basically try and get all the CCTV you can get hold of. If you think about the Eliza Fletcher case, you think about Kylie Rodney, they'd simply applied that from day one. Let's find all the CCTV that we possibly can. Well, just that can actually solve your case. And if you're saying, well, let's just try and find CCTV over here and over there, well, why do you want to restrict yourself? If that investigation then leads to the killer, fine, but a month later it hasn't. So don't restrict yourself. And the other thing that is dangerous with doing that, we say, well, let's just look in this area for the CCTV, is, well, there's an expiry date. This is perishable digital data, right? This digital data only lasts, in some cases, 24 hours, sometimes a week. It's perishable data. So you really don't want to limit, you don't want to lose some of that data. And we've already heard someone, I think, who did not have that data, who said, oh, sorry, it's just kind of been wiped out. I think someone did come up in the media narrative regarding that, right? Okay, let's go back.
You may recall from the second press conference that we specifically put out a plea to the public for any video in the King Road area, and then we gave a defined area, and we put that area on our website as well, asking residents, hey, if you have video or if your neighbor has video, let us know so we can get a copy of that. We understand that video has a finite life, and sometimes systems will start recording over themselves. So we started that process very, very early in the investigation.
Why ask the public for additional help with this white car?
Well, through our tips, through our leads, some of the evidence that came in, we start to identify patterns. And like we said earlier, we are confident that the occupant or occupants of that vehicle have information that's critical to this investigation. We also understand that even though there's sometimes a fascination with a particular case, some people simply don't see the news and may not know that we're looking for it. So if we get the word out there, hey, maybe your neighbor has one in the garage that they don't drive very often. Maybe.
So this is quite interesting from the perspective of, you say, is the driver of this vehicle the killer, right? And then you start thinking, well, it could be your next door neighbor that's the driver of this vehicle, but also the killer. That's a pretty scary thought. And Yeri says it could be someone who doesn't drive this vehicle very often. It could be someone who's kind of a, what's the word? He's kind of a hermit. He's at home a lot. You don't see him very often, but that vehicle nevertheless resides there, right? Yeri says it.
Word out there, hey, maybe your neighbor has one in the garage that they don't drive very often. Maybe there's one that's just not on the registration database. Let us know. So far, we have a list of approximately 22,000 registered white Hyundai Elantras that fit into our criteria that we're sorting through. It
must. It's very hard to say what that means. Does it mean they've got 22,000 sort of evidence tips, or is it sort of little names on a registration document, like how many Hyundai Elantras are there in Idaho? I don't know. I don't know exactly what the 22,000 refers to. I doubt whether it's 22,000 videos, right? That just doesn't seem to be very very likely. Erin says, I love Dragnet. Okay. So that then brings us to this comment that Kaylee's mother said, that the killer was methodical and quick, right? I'm going to, I think, put a quick Q&A in chat right now. Start a Q&A. And then see what you guys say about this. See what you think. Do you agree with that the killer was methodical and quick? Should we listen to that audio again? We're also going to be looking at a ladder and what the possible significance of that might be. Another thing that has come out is we now know, we've been shown the source of that camera that recorded this white Hyundai from the food mart. So let's look at that as well. It's also from this ABC News. ABC News. Okay, so let's go to that.
This image showing a white car. It was taken from an Exxon Mobil station's camera around 3:45 the morning.
So this is a current image of the camera. Well, let's show the mobile first.
It was
so there's the mobile. When I pause the video, it sort of goes like a gray color, but there's the mobile, right? From this angle, and that's where the vehicles were going down the road, and then they would turn. It probably turned at this intersection, right? And it seems like the camera is just around the corner from this wall. So let's play a little bit further.
It's taken from an Exxon Mobil station's camera around 3:45.
Can you see it? Looks like it's just around the corner. And so you can imagine it is getting a really good view of this side of the road, right? This side of the road, because it's just around that corner. Can you see there's a white, I think, advertising board over here? And so it is giving you a view that is sort of going that way and sort of up that way, sort of like a V. The view from the camera is kind of going to be sort of a V going like that and then sort of like that in order to capture what's going on here. And so it certainly would have captured a vehicle turning off there. It's right in front really of this eye. Let's have a look at it again. Now look at that little square there and you'll see it's just around the corner from it. It's like a square roof, sort of yellow brick wall.
From an Exxon Mobil station's camera around 3:45 the morning for University of Idaho students.
Why was that
the
so
morning
quick?
station's camera around.
There it is. So there's that board just around the corner, and it's perched quite high up. And so that's the camera. That's the camera that the Food Mart clerk recovered the footage from. That's where we get that photo of the white Hyundai. It's from this particular camera. So now we've identified two cameras that have sort of bookended the search, on day 1 and then on day, I think this came out on day 30 or 31. So these very sort of what's the word? Not insignificant, but not very visible cameras have been staring out into the fabric of this town and slowly recording things. And meanwhile, the killer thought he could go in and out without being seen. And well, wasn't he seen? And wasn't he? How many eyes did see him? And it kind of raises a really interesting question. Can you, some people may say, I think the killer's going to get away with this, which I don't think. Or this case is not going to be solved, which I don't think. But you tend to sort of think in a way, can you commit crimes anymore? Can you commit the perfect crime anymore when you've got so much surveillance that is just all over the place, right? It reminds me a little bit of Minority Report, that there's sort of there's a security layer in the fabric that's very hard to avoid. One way to avoid it is if you've got a power failure and there's not electricity recording it, or if the camera's broken, or if you spray paint over the camera. But I mean, you'd actually think if a criminal wants to commit a crime, maybe he needs to first go and look at all the cameras that are somewhere. And of course, by going to the camera and doing something to it, he's going to be seen just doing that anyway. So CCTV is fantastic security, either to prosecute a crime or even to prevent a crime. If you know you're being watched, or you're going to commit a crime. And there's a lot of that sort of thing, cameras in the UK, London, they're all over the place. So if there's crime in your community, convince your councillors or whomever to put up more CCTV, or even in terms of your own neighborhood, put up a couple of cameras, put a Ring doorbell camera. It's really going to improve your security. Just that, it's just an eye that is looking out all the time. So now let's deal with what Kaylee's mother said about the killer being quick and methodical.
Hours of November 13th.
I think this person went in very methodical. I think he really thought it out. I think he was quick. I think it was quiet, and he got in and he got out.
So do you guys agree with that? So what did she say? It was quick. Do you agree that it was quick? So Susan says no. Zircon says I agree. So Zircon, do you think it was quick? So Robert Locker says yes. Zenaida says maybe. Chelsea Taylor says I think quick, methodical, depends. Okay, interesting. Gelsey says I agree with her. Okay. What do you guys think? So do you think this was a precision assassin, someone who came in, knew what he was doing, and exactly what she says, went to one bedroom, knew who was there, precision attack, no sound, next room, precision attack, no sound, in, out, and this really well executed crime, almost like like a Marine or some kind of military expert, almost like Mission Impossible, that sort of thing. Do you think that that's what we're dealing with? Almost like a Jason Bourne type character. Do you think that's what we're dealing with here? So while you're thinking about that, there is an image that someone sent me. I think his name is Phil Foss. Thanks a lot for sending this through. Just getting your critical thinking engines going. So what do you guys think about that? I'm looking for what I spoke to you guys about yesterday in terms of those 12 questions, because we dealt exactly with this issue. What kind of crime was this? What kind of criminal was this? And I don't know whether you watched that. I don't know whether some of you missed it or whether some of you have forgotten about what we said there. But do you remember this? So this is actually from, so her mother has said, Kaylee's mother has said, it was methodical, it was quick, right? Well, her father has said that there was a mess of evidence. And yeah, it says, Steve and Christy Consalves said they've heard from police that the crime scene is sprawling and chaotic. They're telling us that there's so much evidence, it's going to take a lot of time. Also, this person was sloppy. So I don't know whether it was kind of putting someone on the spot and maybe she felt awkward and she had to say something, but this is a contradiction. So we've now heard Kaylee's mother, Christy, saying that it was methodical and quick. But we've also heard them say that it was sloppy, chaotic, sprawling, and they left behind a mess. So which one do you think it is? Patrick says not methodical. So which one do you think it is? Which one do you think it is? Lisa says messy and chaotic. That's quite an interesting point. Elisa Further says both. It could be both. It could be methodical. That's really a good point. Could be methodical in the sense that the killer did have a method to his madness. He did think, I'm going to go upstairs to Kaylee's room, and maybe Kaylee wasn't in her room, but maybe he knew where he was going and he knew how he was going to get in. Maybe he was going to get in through the front door, or maybe he was going to use a ladder. I don't think so personally. I don't think a ladder plays a part in this, but I think there was a method. But then I also think there was chaos. I don't think it's possible, unless you are kind of from Assassin's Creed, to commit quadruple murder without there being chaos, a mess, a sprawling crime scene, lots of blood all over the place. What do you think about the other things that she said? She said that it was quick. Do you think it was a quick crime? If we say quick, how long do you think it took to commit this crime? So if the vehicle arrived there, let's say, for sake of argument, at 3:50, the vehicle is parked outside the residence at 3:50. When does that vehicle leave? 5 minutes later, or 10 minutes later, or longer, or shorter? So another way of thinking about that is, how long do you think it takes a knife-wielding killer to kill each victim, including the fact that some of them may fight back? And then you've also got to include in your calculus, is the killer taking some time to clean himself? Is he going to run out into the road covered in blood? Or is he going to stay inside the house, wash his hands at least, wipe the floor, wipe his shoes? Bear in mind, he's standing at a bed. There are two people lying on the bed that are dead or dying. Is he not going to just take a moment to wipe his feet with a blanket or with a sheet or with a pillow? Or is he going to just run out into the hallway and possibly slip? Does he run out? Is he running and then he slips on, there's sort of slick, because there's blood, there's slick slippery. The floor is slick and slippery, put it that way. I apologize for how graphic this sounds. Priscilla says, nope to cleaning. So you think it's all, so Priscilla, you've got to imagine almost, I'm using a bit of hyperbole here, but you must almost imagine taking a bucket of water, or it's not water, but it's something else, and throwing it over yourself. And then now you've got the chance to run outside, drenched in you know what, or do you take a moment and wash your hands? Bear in mind, you've now got to drive outside. It's nighttime, but you've got to drive outside and you've got to arrive home. Are you going to arrive like that? It's just an interesting question. Ted says, I didn't know he cleaned up. No, we don't know. We don't know. I'm saying I think it's likely. That's all. Thanks a lot, Marsha. Thanks a lot for that. Zoe said, I think he had a change of clothing and shoes. So that kind of comes back to this question of how methodical was it? Did he have a backpack in his vehicle? Now, as soon as you say that, so he took a change of clothing, well then just how angry and emotional was he if he was thinking far enough to bring a change of clothing along? I mean, if you think about a rampage, you almost think someone is so angry that they're sort of in a blind rage, that they're not thinking rationally. But if they bring a change of clothing along, then aren't we dealing with a kind of a Jodi Arias type situation? Someone who is very emotional, but they've nevertheless premeditated this for some time. The Crypto Zoo says, or Zoe says, the Crypto Zoo says, I say he wanted to linger. Okay. That's also true. So I mean, that is a kind of a critical question, is how quick and methodical was it? The more quick and methodical it was, the more likely it is to be, I think, an older person, to be honest. But it could also be an experienced hunter. It could also be a military, someone who's got training in this area. I think the more sloppy and chaotic, I think the more likely it is to be a student or a young person. Would you agree with that? I must say, I don't know if they've got the perpetrator's DNA. Definitely, they have DNA, but I mean they have the victim's DNA. You would assume they would have the perpetrator's DNA, but we don't know that for a fact. You would also assume that if they ran that DNA, and they did have the perpetrator's DNA, and they ran it through CODIS, and he was a fairly old criminal, meaning not like 20 years old, but he had like a bit of a backstory, and his previous criminal history had been recorded, then that would have bingoed on CODIS. And since it hasn't, and since he hasn't been named, if it had bingoed on CODIS, this case would be sort of done and dusted, but it hasn't. Yeah, there was that police report. There was that police report. Okay, so that's that aspect that I wanted to deal with. Does she say anything more here?
Leaving her daughter and 3 others stabbed to death and a community on edge.
So that's another thing I want to talk about here, is this ladder. Have you guys noticed this ladder?
He got out.
Leaving her daughter and 3 others stabbed to death and a community on edge.
Have you
The
noticed that
campus
ladder?
now preparing to shut down for winter break.
So the ladder is
In and he got out.
leaving her daughter and 3 others stabbed to death and a community on edge. The campus.
So the ladder is literally just around the side if you're looking at the house from the front. So let's just mute that. The ladder is literally just around there, just around that side, right? There. Have you guys noticed the ladder before? And can you see it looks like kind of a brand new ladder, right? Baby Voss is not a drop of blood on the ladder. That's true. Doesn't look like it. Someone says maybe he climbed up onto the deck. Erin says, do you think the ladder was used though? That's the question. Do you think the ladder was used? So I've gone to a little bit of trouble to get some information, get some images on this ladder. So let's have a look at some of them. So in this image, the ladder is right behind this police car. There the ladder is behind this individual. You can see it's just over there. You can see if you went up this ladder, you would be on that little sort of deck, and you could possibly get into that window, or I suppose if you really wanted to, maybe that window. It would maybe be a bit of a tricky thing, but you could possibly access this window if it is open, right? But the question is, as Erin says, do you think the ladder was used? So there is that ladder. You can go onto that deck. There's a window over there. And if you say, well, the ladder wasn't used to commit a crime, well, what was it used for? Was it used to put something up here? Was it used to put up Christmas wiring, or what was the point of the ladder? Was the ladder used somewhere here in order to put some of these wires into place? What's the point of this ladder? And in this image, if you can't see, this is the drone pilot. There's the drone, and anyway, they're standing in front of that. So I'm going to take you through a couple of additional photos of the ladder. There's another picture of the ladder. This is from Fox Digital. You can see how far away you can be to see right into this house. You can see, in a way, right into these big glass sliding door windows. You can, in a way, also see into that room. If you are elevated, you could see horizontally into that room as well, right? But anyway, from this vantage point, again, what's going on with this ladder? Why is this ladder here? This is not it's not part of the forensic paraphernalia, right? There's another view, quite a good view, with the ladder over there. And there you can see there's a small little platform here, and there is a window right there. Okay. There's another view similar to the one we had a moment ago. There's the ladder again. I guess there's a drone somewhere here. I can't quite see it. Here's another view. There's the ladder. And this gives you a sense of how up and down this house is. This platform obviously is higher than that one. And so, but this gives you quite a good idea. Did the killer arrive and park over here, enter through the front door, leave through here? Perhaps if he, oh, so that's the other thing I wanted to talk about with Kaylee's mother. She says, I think it was quiet. He got in, he got out. That's the other aspect I just wanted to talk about. Do you guys agree with that? That I think it was quiet? Do you guys agree with that part? Yeah, Marin Powell says an innocent reason could be just to hang the lights, right? Frisco Chick says, in my opinion, the ladder wasn't used to commit the crime. Where's that comment? Suddenly disappeared. There it is. So I actually agree 100% with you. And that's kind of the, in a way, the point of me bringing this up is you say, what is important and what isn't? So is the white Hyundai important? And you say, whatever. Then you say, yeah, but there's a ladder there. Isn't that important? Like, what's a ladder doing there? And then you've got to use your common sense and your intelligence and say, well, why is the ladder important or why isn't it? So let's do a quick poll and see how many of you guys think ladder. So you either say ladder is important or ladder is not important. Let's see what you guys say. Lali says that's a typical household ladder. Libby says most likely the sliding door was not locked. I've heard that a lot. I just don't. I don't agree with that. Don't agree with that. Marlene Stewart says I think it was quiet, but are you forgetting that someone heard a scream? So someone heard a scream and someone reported a scream. So either there was a scream and it wasn't quiet, or it was quiet and there wasn't a scream. So that's also the same kind of thing. Do you accept that information and then that's part of how you understand the crime? Or do you just scratch it out? Maybe you say, oh no, the whole scream thing is fake. No, it's not. There was a witness who said he heard it. But then you say, no, the witness isn't reliable. But he might be. He may be somewhat reliable and he may not be. The fact is, a witness reported a scream, right? That's a fact. Is it true that he heard a scream? We don't know that for sure. But isn't it likely that there was a scream? That's where you've got to kind of be careful. And that's also where you want to intertextually look at other cases. Were there screams in the Van Breda case? Were there screams in the murder of Meredith Kircher? Were there screams in the death of John Benet Ramsey? Were there screams in the murder of Reba Steenkamp with Oscar Pistorius? Are there usually screams in cases, right? And then also use your intuition. If someone did scream at 4 o'clock in the morning, was it likely to be heard? Also, could it have been likely to be dismissed, right? So what we're sort of trying to test here is your true crime rocket science, your ability to reason with a given subset of information. Carlito says it's possible there was a scream and it may have awoken Ethan. So it's very hard to imagine that if one of the two girls were murdered upstairs, right on the top, that the second girl wouldn't cry out. It's very, very hard to imagine that. But it's even harder to imagine that after 3 murders, someone that is lying next to the person we assume that is murdered third would also still be asleep. Are you not hearing the patter of feet? Are you and first maybe thinking it could be someone, could be innocent, but then do you not hear thuds and then do you not start to wonder? So you could definitely have had a scream in a 4 murder with a knife scenario. You could definitely have had that. Yeza Thought says, I don't think the ladder was used. That's right. Laurette, it could be. So the whole question is this witness reliable? Short Womp Womp says the ladder wasn't used. I always leave my house and doors open. But there's another reason why the ladder doesn't make any sense, right? It's kind of obvious. It's because we were told there was no forced entry. So I suppose you could say, yeah, but the window on that sort of little balcony could have been left open, right? This window could have been open. Really, do you think it was open at 4 o'clock in the morning in the middle of November when it's ice cold? And you might say, in the middle of winter, I like to sleep with my windows open. That's you, but do you think that's likely? Do you think that's likely here? Do you see any open windows? And I don't think it's even come up anywhere that the killer may have gotten in through an open window. That doesn't seem to be the case at all. What is the case is we know that the front door is wide open. So why do you need a ladder? Why do you need a ladder if the killer got in through the door? And the whole thing about an access code means the killer doesn't need a key. The killer just needs to know that code. And didn't a lot of people know that code? So in the John Benet Ramsey case, one way that although I don't think it was really a useful line of investigation, but in the John Benet Ramsey case, one of the ways that they used to investigate possible suspects was they asked how many people had keys to the Ramsey home, keys. And then the answer was quite a few. There was the housekeeper, there were certain friends, and I guess family members. But there was quite a number of people. I don't know whether there was a situation, I can't quite remember if they would sort of leave a key under a pot plant, or it could even have been that the neighbor was given a key as well, the Barn Hills. In this situation, it's in a way similar, but I think more pertinent because we know there was an intruder in this case. And so the question is, how many people got this access code? And surely this access code was sent via text message or something to certain people. I doubt whether they put it on a sort of a pin board at college next to class. How was this number given out? And that could also be a very important line of inquiry. Also, did they say, please don't give this number out? How did they maintain security around it, or didn't they? Did people who came to the house willy-nilly gave that security number, that access code to the front door? Did they give it out willy-nilly? And did somebody get upset about someone giving out that access code, inviting someone that they had not invited? So I agree with you. I don't think the ladder is important here. What I do think is useful and interesting is, as soon as you look at the ladder, you start to notice other things. You start to get, for example, this view of the house, which I haven't actually seen before. I haven't seen this view. And then you get a sense from this view of the road going up this way, the woods on this side. Also, could you have parked a car here or here? And then couldn't anyone have seen something from any of these windows or heard something from any of these windows? So in our search so how can I put this? In the effort of just collecting these images to tell you about the ladder, which I don't even think is sort of has any merit or is material to this investigation, you nevertheless are learning things. You're getting to know the house and the neighborhood a lot better. And the important thing about the ladder is that you're starting to pay attention to details, and you've got to pay attention to details that matter and also pay attention to details that don't matter. And as time goes by, you're going to figure out more and more which are the details to prioritize. So like we said at the beginning, you don't sort of say, in terms of CCTV, let's just get the CCTV from that little area. You say, let's get all the CCTV we can get hold of. And I don't remember, maybe I don't remember, maybe it was said, but did law enforcement say we are looking for CCTV footage in this area right in the beginning, or were they just saying all your video, right? Like, that really needs to be stressed. We literally want your CCTV from residences and that sort of thing. Everyone who's got it, give it to us, right? And then you're going to be getting ladders that you don't need to look at, but it's also going to give you the ability to see other things that start to color in what needs to be colored in. So in other words, don't narrow your focus in the beginning, narrow it, allow the evidence to narrow your focus. Does that make sense? It's the whole thing we spoke about yesterday about being able to see the woods for the trees. If you narrow your focus, you can't see the woods, but also if there are no trees, if your view is so broad, well, you can't even see the woods either. So you need to be able to do both. But one of the things you don't do is narrow your search right in the beginning. So in that sense, something like a ladder isn't unimportant, but is it material? Probably not. The part that I really want to why I really want to talk about the ladder, we're going to go through a couple of additional images, is if you think about how there's been kind of quite a lot of discussion about a certain YouTuber who's been manufacturing evidence. Doesn't the mainstream media sometimes wag the tail of the dog? In other words, if I was the mainstream media and I was talking about the ladder, I would be thinking, yeah, the ladder's not really important, but there's nothing else to talk about, so let's talk about the ladder. That's what I'm kind of talking about. That's not fake news, but it's non-news. It's non-news news. And I think we can all agree that the mainstream media do that quite often. They pretend that they don't know something and take you round the block, and ultimately it's not very important. And this ladder over there is kind of an example of that. But I didn't want to sort of start off this analysis by saying to you guys, like what Short Womp Womp says. I wanted to test your guys, your ability to make that assessment, and so you don't look at everything as, oh, this is absolutely important. You need to start at some point filtering out. Like, we're a month into this investigation, this is where you start to filter out, that's not important, that is. That's fake news reporting or whatever, and that isn't. Mama Hen's Catholic teaching says registration means every state you must register your car. So there's 22,000 people in Idaho. Okay. So you think there are 22,000 Hyundais in the entire state of Idaho? It is all about balance, yeah. And not everyone can do that. Some people fixate on the social media side, or they go to 4chan or something, and that's where they get everything. Someone else will go just provide a summary of what's in the news, which may be a little bit of a shallow analysis. Someone else will deal with all of the rumors, and some people do that better than others. Do you go down every single tangent, or do you start to build your case in a way that's rational? Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of additional images here. So we've looked at that one, looked at that one. So if you looking at the house from the front, the ladder's over there. Now, let me ask you guys just a really kind of simple question. If you wanted to commit a quick, methodical, effective crime with a knife, would you rather go into a house through the front door, which you've got access to, and would that be quieter than if you went in through a window? In other words, if you opened a window and sort of climbed through a window and someone is sleeping in bed in that room, and you're now opening the window and climbing through the window, that's going to make kind of a sound. And possibly there's going to be a silhouette of you in the curtain or in the window at that time as well, which is more likely to be a botched crime. Coming through the window in someone's bedroom, because that is a bedroom, right? Coming through the window into somebody's bedroom, or through the front door, which you've got access to. I think you could make the argument that if Ethan and it's just useful to think about this, you could make the argument that if Ethan and Xana were sleeping in the same room, and the room they were sleeping in was on the opposite side, then that may have been a vacant room. That may have been a room that maybe a previous occupant slept in or whatever. And did that occupant know that the window would be open? That's definitely something you could think about. I would just imagine that line of thinking and questioning has been ruled out. And as people have mentioned, if they got in through the ladder, why would you go out through the ladder? Suppose you could say they got in with the ladder and went out another way. But just for the sake of being thorough, you do need to test some of those ideas, especially when you still haven't caught the intruder. So there you can see the ladder from the side, and then zoomed in, there it is. In this image, you can see there's that window. And what is interesting about this room is it looks like it is, you can't see into it. So one wonders, was there a crime committed in this room? Right? Was a crime committed in this room? The ladder is here. Was a crime committed in this room or in the room that's on that side? Can't quite remember, is it this side? That's another bedroom, right? Was the crime committed here or here? And then the other thing to think about is we know about the blood dripping down. Well, wasn't it dripping down on the other side of this room, right? And the other side of where this is. See if I can find that image again. So if you look at this image, where do you think this image is in terms of the photos we're looking at? Right? If you look at this image in terms of, where is this image in terms of the houses? Right? It's telling you where someone must have died, right? It seems to be, that seems to be on this side. In other words, this room, doesn't it? This is kind of the porch area. There's sort of gravel or something going uphill, right? If you go round that side, what do you get? So you would go that way. Let's just deal with these images. So that's where it is, right? That is where that blood evidence was coming down the wall, right? That's over there. The photo of that was coming through here with this pillar in the way, that way, right? That's where it is. It's not there, it's there, right? Can you see there's a sort of a black pipe or something over here, and there's gravel coming up here. So if we go back to that image, there's that sort of black pipe coming around there. Do you agree that this is that this is there. So in other words, the crime occurred down on this floor in this room. And there's the ladder, and there's that platform. And so there's the ladder, this is this side of it, and there's a window there. So you do want to think, does this ladder have any significance because it's on the side of one of the crime scenes? So there's just at the tip of the view of that ladder, there's another view of that area where the blood's coming out. There's that platform. But can you see what's happening is we are starting to get a much better sense of even the house just by looking at the ladder, right? Daniel, thanks a lot for that. Daniel says, amazing channel. Thanks. I've been watching your JonBenet videos. Thanks very much. Thanks a lot for that. Appreciate it, Daniel. I've actually got, do you know that JonBenet's father was interviewed by Megyn Kelly? So I've actually been wanting to find time to, I've dealt with that on Patreon, but I've been wanting to find time to do a YouTube video on that. So look out for that. Thanks a lot. John says the ladder is too risky. What would he say if someone walked by? Yeah, so all of that's true. And what I'm trying to emphasize here is what we're trying to do is just look at the ladder, almost to say why the ladder wasn't used, but also just to give it a proper look. Let's get as many views as we can of this ladder. And then you start to see things that may not be true, and I don't think they are true, but they nevertheless add to your level of understanding of the whole house and the whole setup. And do you think that has happened? Again, this is that seems to be the video camera from around the corner of the house. Just love to know. I'd love for Brian Enter to go up these stairs, stand there and look and see what he can see from that vantage point. That's what I would do if I was in Moscow right now. Okay, so that's in terms of the ladder. The last thing I want to say about the ladder is what is brought up in this interview.
When we were growing up,
and it's from News Nation. It's Elizabeth Vargas on this case. So let's just see what she says.
Who could be a suspected killer. The 4 people seen walking in this video, this body camera footage near the crime scene, do we have anything that we can get out of that? I mean, how could it possibly be unrelated when it was so close to the house?
So before we get to her answer, it's kind of the same question. Are these 4 people walking by the house like the ladder, right? What do you guys think? Are these 4 people walking by, are they like the ladder version of this case, which is, yeah, it's part of what you see, but is it part of the, like, is it really that suspicious, right? So Dover says that's a non-news story. Okay, so that's a good point. Police have already said the ladder was theirs. But I mean, they're talking about the ladder now. It's in the news. It's there's a Newsweek article that's out right now. Where is it? Where is that? I think I've got it on a separate email. And that's why I'm asking the question. If you're talking about YouTubers or whatever faking news, don't you sometimes have the mainstream media either out of ignorance or just to keep the news cycle running? Don't you have them also kind of wasting time dealing with things that shouldn't be dealt with? And I think sometimes it's innocent. Sometimes journalists simply don't know the details. And sometimes I think it's not innocent. It's like, well, we haven't spoken about this. Let's just put it up as content. So look at this story. It came out on the 13th, so quite recently. Ladder outside Idaho student murder scene reported to FBI. Really? Did you need to report that to the FBI? Americans are poring over the available information to crack the case. The ladder is the latest detail for them to focus on. And that's kind of why I've looked at the ladder, because it's something that it's something that we don't really need to be looking at. Is that any different to really fake news? Right? Is that something the FBI really need to look at? And the answer is no. In the same way, these 1, 2, 3, 4 individuals moving past there, is that something we need to be looking at? And then you can take that through everything. Do we need to be looking at Hoodie Guy? Do we need to be looking at the white Hyundai? What do we look at and what do we not look at? And the answer is you actually need to look at everything, but then start prioritizing what you don't look at and what you do, or what you don't need to look at in the future. So in terms of these 4 individuals, do you think we need to look at them? Listen to Elizabeth Vargas answering this question.
The 4 people seen walking in this video, this body camera footage near the crime scene, do we have anything that we can get out of that? I mean, how can...
And I think that's a question that content creators are thinking about all the time. What can we get out of that? It's kind of like almost to think of, can you manufacture this into a story, right? What can we get out of that? And so let's see how she answers the question.
Could it possibly be unrelated when it was so close to the house?
It isn't unrelated. There were 4 people who were close to the house around the time of the murders.
So she says it isn't unrelated, and I think it's the same way of saying the ladder's not unrelated. Actually, isn't it? Actually, isn't this unrelated, actually? And if you think about it, if you say 4 people are walking near the house, should you pay attention to that? But the circumstances are, this was released in terms of 3 other people that were being cited for kind of underage drinking. I'm not sure if all 3 were, but you know, those kids that were cited for underage drinking. So those 3 kids were walking around, and the police released that footage because, how can I put it? They didn't release that footage because those kids were guilty of something. They released it because they could maybe, it might lead to seeing something else. In the same way that me taking you guys through looking at the ladder may help us to see something else. You see the house from all these angles related to the ladder, right? In the same way, you can maybe sort of see other angles through that, but then you see 1, 2, 3, 4 individuals walking by. Is that suspicious? Is that kind of a big deal? And then you kind of ask the question, what on earth were 4 individuals doing walking over there at that time? Well, you know what the time was? It was, I think, 3:12 or something like that. I don't really think that's when the crime happened, but there you go. The other side is, what are those 4 individuals doing there? Well, the exact same thing that the other 3 individuals were doing there. What do individuals walking around late at night on college campuses, what are they doing? They are late night Romeos coming home. They are people drinking and partying, and they are going wherever they're going. And you can't say every single person that is walking around at night is suspicious, right? this is where you want to start narrowing it down and saying, actually, we think that this crime, this is how I think about it. Actually, we think this crime happened between 3:50 and 4 o'clock. And I believe the killer was driving this white vehicle. So why on earth are there 4 kids walking around? And why are you paying attention to that? I'm not saying don't pay attention to it, but there's also a logical answer. How important are 4 kids walking around when there's a plainclothes cop citing 3 other kids that are right there? Are you telling me the police themselves that captured this footage don't know when they were right there themselves, right? It's sort of the media and social media second guessing what the police know, which sometimes they do need to do, but sometimes, come on guys, let's not kid ourselves. There were 2 officers on scene right there, right then, right? Anyway, so let's go on to see what she says here.
It could be completely innocuous and innocent. It was a Saturday night, or actually Sunday, completely innocuous. And there were 4 people who were
House.
It isn't unrelated. There were 4 people who were close to the house around the time of the murders. It could be completely innocuous and innocent. It was a Saturday night, or actually Sunday morning, but college kids are out and about. There were frat houses nearby. There were parties going on. It could have been kids trying to avoid being arrested for underage drinking, like the kids who were being arrested that we see in this body cam video. So we don't know who those 4 are. Obviously, police want to find them and ask them. They might have seen something. They might have heard something. They might have seen the car that they're now looking for. So obviously, I can't imagine police haven't been trying to track these 4 people down, or that these 4 people haven't.
So I must say, the narrative around this has also changed. The first time I saw it, I think it was on Law and Crime, I think, and they spoke about these people running past the camera, and that's simply what I repeated. I'd seen, I think, the words runners in the title of the video. I think the reference to them was joggers, right? And so I just repeated that myself. When you see it slow down like this, it actually does look like they're walking. And so as soon as you have this idea, wow, these guys were running from the scene. No, well, they weren't running. I don't know. It's just kind of crazy.
Actually come forward to say, we were in the area that night and here's what we saw, or here's what we didn't see. So obviously police want to talk to it is related, Adrian. It's just a matter of how.
A gas station clerk in Moscow claims that she spotted the white car around the time of the murders, but we know the car didn't have plates. So unless there are these crystal clear images of surveillance footage.
So I don't know if that's accurate. I don't know if it's accurate to say the car didn't have plates. Maybe it didn't, but as far as I understand it, they couldn't tell the license plate on the vehicle. That's how I understood it. And can you see how a statement like that can be misinterpreted by someone else watching this, say, wow, the fact that that vehicle didn't have plates means it's really suspicious. Someone was driving around with this vehicle. It must be stolen, or it must be new, or it must be a rental, or whatever. But that's not strictly speaking true. Did it have plates? I think they just don't know, that they weren't able to capture the plates. So what do you guys think of this comment that's just been left on my chat? Glove found today, I picked it up, etc., etc., etc. What do you think about that? Do you think that that is something we should take seriously? He doesn't say, I found a glove today. It's spoken in quite a weird way. What do you guys think about that? Yeah, exactly. So he is blocked. I really do think we were born yesterday. Anyway, let's continue.
Footage that would be so crisp that you could zoom in on a picture of the driver. How can this even help the investigation?
Because somebody else might have footage of that white car that does show the license plate. That's a crucial.
So there you have it sort of cleared up, where Elizabeth Vargas knows for a fact that, well, how can I put it? She knows that it's not an issue that it didn't have license plates, but they simply weren't visible, right?
Thing. It was about 3 weeks after the crime that police came forward and said, we're looking for this white car. Anybody who saw the white car, please contact us. There's obviously a lot going on that we don't know about. What led them to put out that plea for anybody who saw the car? How did they know that white car was in the area at the time of the killings? So
anyway, she did really great reporting, I think, of the Scott Peterson case. And wasn't it Elizabeth Vargas that interviewed Linda Arendt in the John Benet Ramsey case? Okay, so what else did I want to deal with in this? So 102 pieces of evidence have been gathered. Another thing I wanted to bring up, just dealing with other issues. Do you guys remember really early on that law enforcement literally said that no, the victims weren't hogtied. No, the victims were not bound and gagged. Do you remember that? Do you remember that detail? Where sort of out of nowhere they said, no, the victims weren't. I'll play it quickly.
Investigators are aware that multiple phone calls from Madison and Kaylee's phone were made to a male subject. Any online reports stating that the victims had been tied and gagged are not accurate. Detectives seized the contents of 3 dumpsters on King Road made from the phone of one of the surviving roommates. Moscow Police Department officers responded and located 4 victims, 2 on the 2nd floor and 2 on the 3rd floor. The Latah County coroners conducted autopsies, and detectives have been provided with the results of those autopsies. We know that the autopsies confirmed the identity of the 4 victims, determined the cause and manner of death as homicide by stabbing, and determined that it was likely all 4 victims were asleep during the attack. Some of the victims had defensive wounds, and each victim was stabbed multiple times. There was no sign of sexual assault.
And it's details like that that came out right in the beginning that people forget. You don't have essay. Also, if you think about it, they've had this idea that all 4 victims were attacked in their sleep. But if someone screamed, does that mean that that's not the case? You would think that that means that that's not the case. And at the time that this came out, the 20th of November, Inan Harsh hadn't said that he heard the scream. So you could say technically it could be that they were all attacked in their sleep. And even if they had defensive wounds, well, when they attacked, they wake up. But it does seem as though we could modify that to say some of the victims were asleep when they were attacked and some weren't. Would you agree with that, that since the 20th of November, it seems likelier now that at least one of the victims may have woken up before she was attacked? If you take that literally and you say you could have defensive wounds if the first stabbing doesn't kill you, the stabbing actually wakes you up, and then you fight back. So it could technically be true. Yeah, I agree with that. That's also a sad but true statement. It's quite an interesting comparison. Sharon Tate murders, yeah. If you think about the Sharon Tate murders, is that targeted, but in the sense of did the perpetrators there have a personal relationship with someone, or was their gripe almost a activism type social gripe against the culture? In other words, in what way were those victims chosen in the Sharon Tate murders? And the answer is there wasn't really a direct connection. There was a very, very weird, loose, crazy, indirect connection. And drugs were a factor in that case, right? What did someone say about defensive wounds? Jessica says, Ethan did wake up. That's what I think. Okay. What is the other thing? So, in terms of the, does he say that about bound and gagged? Let me just see if I can bring that up again.
Have you girls ever been on a cruise?
Investigators are aware that multiple phone calls from Madison and Kaylee's phone were made to a male subject. Any online reports stating that the victims had been tied and gagged are not accurate.
Where do you think those reports came from? Where do you think those reports online that the victims were bound and gagged came from? Well, it came from a certain YouTuber who also reported the scream, this very same guy. Do you guys know that? So literally as early as the 20th of November, you've got law enforcement having to say in a press conference something that they've heard that's not true, and they've had to acknowledge it to say it's not true on the 20th of November. This is a week into this case. And if that's not a warning to that YouTuber, I don't know what is. We're saying it at a news conference. We're aware that you said something. We're aware that it's not true. And we are directly contradicting it. And then you have something else happening after that as well. And I don't know if you guys know Iked Mel, I think his name is Melvin. Anyway, Iked Mel appeared on Ashley Banfield really recently, where he was asked to talk about that particular YouTuber. And you have a really interesting situation where the mainstream media has a YouTuber on to address fake news from YouTube. It's kind of like we are interviewing you to talk about why certain YouTubers discredit themselves or discredit true crime. We will have you on to talk about that. And obviously it's a credit to Iked Mel. But I mean, there's not really a lot of speaking to YouTubers sort of in general, unless they're up to mischief kind of thing. The other thing that's, I think, worth thinking about is News Nation is also kind of, it's mainstream. It's got proper, really, really good journalists, a lot of them, very respectable journalists, but also they also a YouTube channel, right? Like it's not totally a separation here. Obviously, in terms of their reporting, it's very professional and it's excellent, but in a way, it's also like a certain kind of YouTube channel interviewing another one. SW Firefly says, do you think there's any significance to the multiple phone calls from Kaylee and Maddie being the first thing the police chief mentions in that conference? That's a good point. I think the significance is that it was very hard not to think about Kaylee Kaylee's ex-boyfriend, or Kaylee's, not sure if it's ex or boyfriend. So it's very hard not to think about that aspect. And I think that they felt they want to race to do rumor control. I also think it is very pertinent what happens in the minutes and hours before a murder. And so what happens in terms of those phone calls is very pertinent. Those phone calls take place after the food truck incident. The food truck incident is also very pertinent, but isn't the most pertinent thing in terms of the timeline this vehicle driving, we think, to the house at 3:45 a.m. I mean, it's been described as the biggest breakthrough in this case 3 weeks later, but we didn't know that this vehicle was actually spotted on day one. So it was actually the biggest breakthrough on day one, the vehicle. And the question is, who's the occupant of the vehicle? Don't law enforcement know that by now? But News Nation in particular are mostly, or am I wrong about this? Aren't they mostly on YouTube, or only on YouTube? Legal-minded friend says YouTube's the way to go. I don't watch mainstream anymore. Okay, so was there anything else I wanted to share with you guys? So I've got a couple of other images here. So there was someone on earlier that wanted to know, or that thanked me for my coverage on John Monet. This is my most popular book of all my books right now. The Craven Silence 2 Kindle edition, right? So a couple of other things I wanted to bring to your attention is, should this channel, or would you be interested in coverage of things like 4chan and this sort of stuff? And you kind of have things like that leading to exactly this sort of thing, where you had a neighbor, can't quite remember what he said he saw, but anyway, you have this neighbor that smiles in the middle of his interview, and he then became one of the many suspects that have already emerged. So anyone who makes an interview from that area, social media says, hang on, couldn't he be a suspect? Well, he's the neighbor, could he be a suspect? Could the grub truck chef, or the guy that came forward there, what was his name again? Name has slipped my mind. Anyway, could he be a suspect? So anyone who comes forward publicly becomes an automatic suspect, becomes content food for social media. This guy was one of them. So should a channel like mine deal with these sorts of slurs on other people, right? Because that's automatically what happens. It's again the question of, how do you deal with the ladder? And the answer is, you don't ignore information, but you also need to start filtering it and saying, that's far more credible than what that is. The vehicle is far more credible than the ladder. The vehicle is far more credible than the 4 individuals. The 4 individuals running by there probably aren't worth paying attention to, but it's more important than the ladder, right? So there it says, this is from Reddit, right? And I'm reposting something that appeared on News Nation, and I'm not doing this to accuse Jeremy Reagan. I'm doing it to show you how accusations have led to, there you see, false accusations and rumors fueled by social media, right? Someone says, I've been reading on Reddit and the neighbor, Jeremy Reagan, doing multiple interviews, whatever. And that's what happens. And that's kind of what I've been saying. Especially when it comes to young people, you shouldn't do interviews. You shouldn't share things on social media, you will automatically become a target. And so if you from my community and you're on any other channel and someone is doing that sort of thing, you should kind of warn them. If someone is on their own social media doing a live or something, you should warn them, you're going to become a target, because it's happening over and over again in high profile cases. Someone, out of the goodness of their heart, does something, and then, in other words, they try and participate, they try and openly be good citizens, and then they're punished by it, by cynical, opportunistic people in the true crime space, right? And I feel it's becoming more and more my mission to try and warn these people and help these people and protect these people. In other words, not add to the victims that are already there, right? That's how my channel, in a way, differentiates itself from a lot of other channels. That is what being more authentic means. And also it means I get fewer views, because running around blaming the neighbor and saying, I think he could be, is going to get you views and clicks and earn you a nice income, but it's a fraudulent, dishonest way of making money online. The same way as if I had titled this video something about, is lead a big clue, when I'm pretty sure that it isn't, right? You know what I mean? And that also, again, depends on you guys using your critical thinking to help true crime get where it needs to go. Because we're seeing dishonesty in true crime. We're seeing liars in the true crime space, liars, manipulators, opportunists in the true crime space. Are these people being held accountable? If you've got a channel with 250,000 subscribers and you do something that is in a way obstruction of justice, you are pretending, manufacturing evidence, which leads to tips that are not actionable, then and you only lose X amount of subscribers, is that right? In other words, does it not matter? Do we not care? Lucy Day says, no notification, this was on. Lucy, I suggest you unsubscribe, resubscribe, hit the notifications, and others of you not getting notifications, you can do the same thing. It should matter, should matter. Alex says, let's narrow any possible evidence down. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Hungry Helmet. Thanks a lot. There definitely is a question around that. Is he credible? There's definitely a question around that. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I suppose if you really want to know, you could probably give him a lie detector test. If the police want to know, put it that way. Yeah, there definitely is fictional crime in true crime, which is so tragic. Someone has decided, I can exploit true crime, literally where people die, where lives are changed, where there's real human tragedy. I can exploit that. I can turn that into entertainment and my personal playground. And there are literally channels that are doing that have fun with true crime. And I keep saying true crime's not true crime. You must remember, real people died, and it's actually serious. And we need to. You can be a human being and sometimes make a joke and be a person, but you are dealing with a subject that is by its very nature serious and important. And we need to be sensible when talking about it. Shoes are being viewed says, I don't think he was 5 minutes quick. I don't think I don't think so either. Hey Jude, that's the Netherlands, I think you're referring to. I think it could easily have taken about 10 minutes, which sounds like a short time, but it's actually a very long time to be an intruder. I think it could have taken as long as 10 minutes. If you think about it, each victim may have taken 1 to 2 minutes. So that's already between 4 and 8 minutes. And then there's getting in, getting out, and maybe a little bit of washing up. So I think 8 to 10 minutes is possibly how long the perpetrator was in that situation. Bear in mind, if there was some fighting back, it could extend it by as long as another minute. Laura says, as soon as I can, I'm going to join. Thanks a lot. Shane says that third floor is not that high up. The attack could have actually started on the top floor. I think that is where the attack did start. I think that is where it did start. Angela says 10 to 12 minutes. Yeah, makes sense. Joe Kelly, if either of the two roomies had set up the deal, I'm not sure what that's about. So I just want to look at if there's anything else I meant to talk to you guys about. We are almost at the 2-hour mark. So I think I've said everything I want to say. Just want to see if there's anything else I wanted to bring up. So are you guys aware of this? You guys aware of this? And this happened a few hours ago. Man who fired shots barricaded in an apartment is down, right? Let me just play this.
This is breaking news.
And we continue to follow breaking news this morning here on Wake Up Nonstop Local with the very latest in Pullman, where that SWAT standoff has come to an end, and our Noah Bolter just arrived on scene.
All right, he joins us on the phone right now. Noah, tell us exactly where you are, what you're seeing, and what you know at this point.
Sam Kalai, I'm standing right in front of the man shop, which is right off Bishop Boulevard and Stadium Way. It's on the main entrance into campus. And what I see right now is one marked police car, one unmarked police car, and there were a bunch more. They've blocked off a whole section of the street, one of the main roads towards Walmart and some of the main shops in Pullman. What I see is a gun on the ground behind the police cars, stationed above an apartment complex, and the apartment complex behind the man.
So this is dealing with an incident that happened not that far away from Idaho, right? It happened in Pullman, Washington, right? And so let me take you there. It's 10 miles away, 19 minutes away. So from the house in King Road to this incident at Pullman, 20 minutes away, right? Let's just deal with this comment quickly. Shane Culkin says, the killer could have made entry on the 3rd floor, except that they say there was no breaking and entering. So again, I think you would have asked that question. If they broke in, if they got in any other way, why is the front door open? If they got in any other way, why is that door open? And I suppose you could say, well, maybe someone left it open anyway, but that seems to be the likeliest point of either entry or exit if it was open. But it's a valid point. I mean, it is certainly possible. But you again assuming that there could have been windows or doors open elsewhere when we already know what was open. Thanks a lot, Cleveley. Chad from Sydney. Cool. Thanks very much. Okay, so we're dealing here with an incident that has happened very recently at a university in Pullman, just 10 miles away. And this information was brought to my attention by SM Kobelinsky. Thanks a lot for that. And sorry, where was that story? I think it's there. Let's play the rest of it.
Shot has a SWAT car and a police car with no lights on. The SWAT car is sitting literally right next to where a bunch of students could be sleeping. I'm hearing reports that they're evacuating those students to Beasley Coliseum, which is a short drive across the campus, but a bunch of areas are blocked off behind the apartment complex.
Okay, Noah, we had heard also reports that they were sending emergency vehicles beyond police vehicles because we know that shots were fired. What we haven't heard is if anyone was hurt. Are you seeing anything like an ambulance?
Yeah, I'm not. I haven't seen a single emergency vehicle yet. When I was driving in, though, I did see a police car with lights on going the opposite direction. And it was heading in the direction of Beasley Coliseum. So I'm not sure about that. I know just a minute ago, another police car arrived here at Bishop Boulevard. They had an exchange with some of the other police that were on scene and then drove off, but appeared to be in a hurry.
And Noah, real quick, you described that gun on the ground. Is it, I would just...
So what I'm looking for is SM Kobelinsky thought that could this be the perpetrator? Could this person who is involved in this issue, and it seems to be within a university situation as well, very close by, he kind of asked a question. I'm actually trying to find his questions. I can't find them. I'm sort of going through because he sent me so many messages, because there are so many messages sent through. I actually can't find the actual questions that are being asked. SM Kobelinsky, are you here right now? I mean, normally you are. Erin says, can we see Timmy? He's on my bed. Can I bring him up a little bit later? Cotton Star says, I believe this is a young first-time offender who is more scared than dangerous. It does seem that way. This suggests the possibility of someone else, someone who's a problem case, someone who's got sort of military experience. Erin, I'm going to get to me in, but just give me a moment just to complete this. Is SM Kobelinsky here? I'm looking for the questions that you were asking regarding this incident. In other words, could it be related? There are just so many comments here. I can't really find it. I can't find where you asked those questions. See if I can, let's try one more time. I've got 20 messages in this one thread to look through. And so far, I've gone through most of them. SM Kobelinsky, are you here in chat? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Anyway, I kind of asked the question, what are your questions regarding this case? And SM Kobelinsky said, I wonder whether this person could be a suspect. And I don't have the information at hand because that was where he provided it. But he basically said the person who was involved in this had a military background, but also studied at the University of Idaho and certain other things. I could tell you more about it, but I'd be making kind of assumptions, and I don't really want to do that. So anyway, this was just his thought. He brought this to my attention. My answer is I don't really think it's related. I think this is also Isn't it involving a shooting or something? So I don't really know. This happened in the last couple of hours.
Is there police tape around this gun, and what kind of firearm? Are we talking handgun? Are we talking rifle?
Yeah, it's a rifle. It's a rifle, and it's behind the police section that's cordoned off. It's right now I'm standing on the legal side of where you can stand with the tape, and I'm probably 50 feet away. Like, it's right there, sitting on the ground next to a police car with us.
So I showed you the map. It's not that far from Moscow, and it's just happened in the last. It happened earlier today, actually, and it says here, Pullman PD have resolved the situation, all clear. A fire was started inside the apartment, which is now leading them to evacuate the building. The students living in the apartment were evacuated. Police say a man barricaded himself in an apartment in Pullman. Police say shots have been exchanged, right? And then I think what Esenko Walensky was wondering was, is this actually them capturing the suspect in terms of the Idaho thing? I think we would have heard that by now. Like, I mean, this has happened how long ago? It's fairly recent, but it's nevertheless, according to my time, I think it is it for might be an hour and a half ago, if I'm reading this right. And it's that 2:29 p.m. It's hard to say if the browser is automatically changing the time to where I am. I don't know if what's the case. Again, I wanted to talk to Esenko Walensky about this. I assumed he would be in chat. But anyway, he thought that this could be related, and I think the answer is I don't think it is. I think right in the beginning there was a chance it could be, but the answer now is very unlikely. Yeah, Krem says man in his studies made threats, all of that. Yeah. So you might also say, wow, how fair is it of you to highlight that person as a suspect? Well, he's died, right? There was some kind of serious confrontation between someone within the fabric of a university campus in Pullman, and that person has now died during that confrontation. So, yeah, it does look like he stepped away, and pretty unfortunate. We just see if there's any additional messages. Really wish I could find those questions that he sent me, or those comments that he sent. It's not that. Some think it's connected, but possibly not all. Yeah, I just can't find. Must be on a different thread that he sent it. But anyway, it's quite an interesting question. Remember, I said I think this is going to be solved in the next day or two. That 22,000 tips thing makes me think otherwise. That is a lot of 22,000 references to a Hyundai Elantra. That is definitely a lot to go through. So yeah, it's probably going to take longer than I suspected. If you are gonna go systematically through all of that, it is going to take quite long.
This gas station footage is hugely crucial, and
I definitely agree with that this gas station footage is big, and the Hyundai is also big. So I want to end off just by reminding you guys, some of you guys who may not have caught what I said in the beginning, that they've now found that the vehicle was the Hyundai was seen on day one, on the first day after the crime, which I think is really incredible Let me see if I can find that story again. I've just got so many links open here. Is it this one? So this to me is really the story of the day from Fox News, this one. This has come out now. White car spotted in footage obtained by police on one day after killings. Really quite incredible. And so that just shows that they've been playing their cards quite close to their chests, and also that they weren't really able to do, maybe they weren't able to do anything with what they knew. We've seen a car, maybe they've heard tips and more information about this car. Well, now we need the public's help. And so a little bit more information on this. We've seen that's the camera that spotted the vehicle on day one. This is the view down the street from that camera. This is how close that camera is to 1122 King Road, literally just around the corner. 0.3 miles, which is like a stone's throw away. And that's the apartment. It looks like that is the camera. It's sort of adjacent to a sort of grey wooden pillar. I suppose that could be it as well. But there's sort of a rafter there and a pillar, and that's what we see there. Does that look like a microphone or a motion sensor or something? But that's, yeah, part of something that's going on here. So really quite incredible. Shall we play this clip and then I'll sort of exit? Let's just play a little bit from this clip. The case is not going cold.
The crimes seem to get progressively worse over time.
That's not really what I wanted to look at. Okay. So the property owner was Kane Franstech. He came forward November 14, which was that Monday, when detectives came, I guess, to him and asked for surveillance footage. There you have it, 0.3 miles from the murder scene. He said he had downloaded it and gave it to them. And there you have it. So I thought that was really important information to bring to your attention. The most important information, as I say, the kids running around, probably not important. The ladder you see behind me, probably not important. But the details matter. When you're looking out for details, you can't just do that. You've got to pay attention to the details, but at some point you've got to start filtering and realizing where you're getting credible information from and where you're not. So one aspect that where there is a little bit of uncertainty around is, did that chef in an harsh hear scream or not? And I guess we might know that by getting to know him a little bit better, and seeing what he does going forward. I don't know if you guys remember in the Kylie Rodney case, you had that amateur diver, and a lot of people dismissed him and were suspicious of him, and he was legit in terms of what he found. So someone may be eccentric or strange, or what they do may not be perfect, but what they know may nevertheless be of some significance. It's hard to know. Okay. So I think that's it. I'm going to deal with a couple of questions and then I'm going to get out of here. So let's have a look. BG says the police have a massive job to do. That's true. Oh yes, I mustn't forget that. Thanks a lot, Liesel. Liesel, I sent you a question somewhere or comment. Please check it out and tell me what you think. Timmy, come here. You need to wake up and Get out of bed. Timmy, come. Timmy. So it seems like he's fast asleep. Oh, here you are. Everyone wants to see you, Timmy. Everyone wants to see you. So you guys hear that? It's like a groan. Do I have to do this? Well, there you can see he is quite tired. He'd rather sleep than be here. So let me ask some of you guys, Conzel, thanks for joining us. Let me ask some of you guys who are owners of schnauzers. It's kind of a gross thing to ask, but someone mentioned it and I can't sort of forget about it now. Do you clean the tears that sort of drain from their eyes? Like, to me, it's like kind of a natural thing. Do you sort of actively, like on a, I don't know, daily basis, do you sort of clean the tears? Are you supposed to clean the tears? Is it something that dog owners just regularly do? Timmy's almost 3 years old. He's 2 3/4, I think, around that. Thanks a lot, Libby. Thanks a lot, Angela. Appreciate that. Yeah, it is working. Love Tina says I've got a beagle. They get colds. Is it normal pet practice to wipe the eyes and clean their eyes? Like, is that something one's supposed to do, like often? David says, especially as they get older. Okay. So how often do you do it? Here's a thought. My dog has tear stains too. Okay. So I guess I need to start doing that. Timmy, can you see his teary eyes? I don't know whether people think I've got a very dirty dog. Maybe needs more of a wash. Timmy likes being dirty though. Don't know if that's an excuse. Timmy rolls around in poo, and if there's a snail or bird poo, he will love to just get himself covered in those smells. Warm water on a washcloth. Okay. So that's kind of what I've been doing. I have my schnauzer groomed. So I mean, you can't not groom a schnauzer. So I do that. But yeah, maybe I need to be a better pet owner and clean his eyes a bit more often. Okay. Erin says warm water washcloth. Okay. Timmy, he's really tired, right? Look at that face. Shame, Timmy. Want to go and sleep? So you must bear in mind it is 20 to 6 in the morning in South Africa. 20 to 6 in the morning, so the sun hasn't even come up. And Timmy is obviously wanting to get his beauty sleep, so that's the situation. Thanks for that, Dover. I guess that's true. Okay. Cool. Okay, guys, thanks for joining me here. Sure, he is tired. Okay. Well, there's some extended time with Timmy. I think he wants to go back to bed. Okay, going to go back to bed. Okay, I take this dog for a walk literally every single day. So I think he is a dog that is having quite a good life. And he's come back. I take him with on holiday. And so I think he has a fairly good life. But maybe I can still do better for him. Okay, thanks a lot, guys. Sorry I missed SM Kowalinsky, but it is what it is. Thanks a lot for joining me. Make sure to, especially over the next while, like, share, leave a comment. You can share more than usual. But, you know, especially if it's a video that you really, I'm going to be doing a short video dealing with this, just covering this, you know, in a short video. If you watch something that you find really worth it, please do share on other platforms that you are often on, right? And please do that. Cookie Cat says it's very normal. Okay, will do. Van der Chim says, I've just arrived, going to replay this. You're going to have to. So Koi Cat says 8:40 p.m. here. Terry says, thanks for being here, Rockets. Terry, thank you for being here. I think you've kind of been the only mod. I haven't paid that much attention to chat, but I don't think there are too many mods here besides you. Lisa Breck, thanks for your super chat right at the end of the previous live. Came right at the end. Thanks, guys. Thanks very much. And I'll obviously be continuing to cover this case. And I do think we're going to see more and more developments. I think the Hyundai is important news. And I think it is, I think we are hot on the trail of the killer. I think we know what he's driving. And I think that's a big thing. So, so let's hold thumbs. Let's hold thumbs. Deborah says, sorry, I missed you. Okay. Remember, if you're listening to this on replay, you can hit the thanks button. Good to see you guys. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Sleep well. Sweet dreams.